I I don't actually have a moral high horse. I'm quite certain if I did, I would not know how to ride it or really care to. Um, Morality is not the point. Life is the point. Jesus is very clear about that too. Um, Listen to the Gospels. Do you hear a lot about morality, about bad people? No, you don't. What you hear about a lot in the Gospels is the availability of a more human way of being. And he's talking to a time. You have to think about the character of the time that Jesus is talking in is identical to ours. It's just that we're at a more fulminant stage of something he discusses and anticipates. Life is always, to some extent, a dance of necessity and volition, necessity and flow. So it's a way of saying uh, that we are never in the world in isolation, and we are always in a context. Um, our flowing into being has a purpose for us, but it has a much greater purpose for life on earth, which is always learning. And it learns through us, through each of us. And life on earth believes that human beings can learn much faster. And human beings are proving that they can. Some of us. Some of us are. Some of us have been for a while. Yeah. I often in America start with Henry Adams, uh, who wrote a book. God, what is it called? The Virgin and the Dynamo, I think. But he's talking about the rate of technological change, where the change in technology alters the whole character of society, because that was already apparent to him, that was becoming a pattern that was going to accelerate steadily. And he talked about what that meant. Not a bad book to read either, but it's a little challenging, unnecessarily challenging. I think I summed it up pretty well. There's no way to sum up the spirit of Henry Adams, which is worth knowing. If we ever get out of this, there's an America nobody knows. That's quite attractive. And he's part of it. Ben Franklin was part of it. Jefferson wanted to be part of it. Desperately. More desperately than many of the founders. His hypocrisy is not simple. It's complicated. His feelings about slavery, profoundly complicated. Everything about him is so fatally flawed that to me he seems like the perfect example of whiteness. Because it's not like in its early stages that it's immediately repulsive. It becomes more repulsive over time. Jefferson knew it. Jefferson, in the original draft of the Declaration of Independence, just said that of the sins of the monarchy, because in the Declaration, right, it has a sort of bunch of whereases to explain, because you had to justify the revolution. It was a big deal. It was like a big no-no, even in the eyes of most British colonists who did not approve. It was like a shocking thing to do. To assume that you had the capacity to create order and not just be its creature. To assume that when you have no way of knowing until you try, if it's the case, people thought was irresponsible. That's a terrible idea. That's, I think, the most likable thing about the founders is they did something that was so disreputable to the majority of their fellows. But then, that became unstoppable because people discovered within themselves a larger aspiration. And this land has never stopped nourishing those who harbor that aspiration to live free, which means to live justly on level ground. There's no other way to live free. If you're living on a slope of inequality, that slope, life can only go downhill, and there's constantly forces that are not human, that human beings set in motion, but that then, just have this sort of mechanical snowballing like compound interest. So the long and the short of it, I think, now, is that you have to decide which is more real to you and important. There is a world that is ending, and there is a world that is beginning. And that's always true. At the moment, though, there's a sharp discontinuity between them. When we stop Gaza, we won't just be stopping Gaza. We'll be ending a whole pattern of genocide around the planet that I know all about, not all about. I could hardly begin to touch the surface. I know enough for it to live in me. You don't need to know everything. It's not like that. I don't know, that's just such a dumb idea. This whole thing, the mad daily regurgitations of barely digested science, none of it telling us anything essential or new. And never, ever disclosing any intention to act and then holding up an applause sign. It's like, what the hell do you think you are? But what they think they are is spectators, because empire reduces all people to spectators in history, not participants. The thing is, it's not sustainable. Only the people can move together as a plurality of unique individuals, each with a perspective uniquely their own. This is essential because it gives us reach of vision and understanding that we could never have achieved in isolation if we were only limited to people whose lives and life experience were very much like our own. Our sense, even of ourselves, would be very partial. We would only know what we're capable of in a very reduced way, very diminished way. But that's where a lot of us are. That's where we're supposed to be kept, is feeling sort of smaller by the day. Don't do it. Just say no. There's nothing small about you. And I don't care what side of any particular thing you say you're on. I'm talking to the person right now. Don't respond to this. Just listen. Don't reply. Don't write some crappy reply. Just listen. I'm telling you, no matter who you are, you're much smarter than you think you are. And you're alive on earth because you're needed. That's a certainty. Don't let them make you small. You're not small. Just don't let them. Whatever you believe, be big.